Welcome, everyone. And thank you for joining us for a great event tonight. Work, Live, Play, Westchester. I'm Marissa Brett, and I am the Executive Director of the Blueprint for Westchester initiative, and I'll be your MC for this evening. We have a very exciting presentation. I mean, really exciting. We'll get to that in a minute, but first, there are a few people that I really want to recognize. Bill Mooney, our president of the Westchester County Association. Bill. Brendan Meyer, the chair of our Young Professionals group at the Westchester County Association. There you are, Brendan. Okay. What button do I hit? There we go. I want to also make sure that I thank our planning committee, who without them, we would not be able to put on this event. And you can see the names are listed: Mark Rosa, Brendan Meyer, Josh Kroll, Julia Emmerich, recently Emmerich, congratulations, she just got married, Kevin McCarthy, Erin Griffin, Phil Bronzy, and Danielle Rollins. Thank you so much to all of you for helping put this together. Our event sponsor this evening, Houlihan Lawrence. Without sponsors like Houlihan Lawrence, we can't put these productions on, so thank you so much for sponsoring this very worthwhile event. And our host, Pepsico. Our host tonight, Pepsico. Could we have a better venue? I mean, really, these grounds are gorgeous. I'd like to invite Jeff Randolph, Vice President for Global Real Estate Services and a board member of the Westchester County Association, to come up and say a few words to welcome you. Jeff.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say to all of you, welcome. We are very proud of being one of Harrison's largest and most prominent occupants. And to the representatives of Harrison, why don't you stand up, because you're hosting this event too, because this is your town, so why don't you all stand up. And I say that with all earnestness. We work very closely with the community, and we're proud residents of the community and proud supporters of the WCA. We also have some other, I think, young members here tonight. You guys want to stand up too? Where are you? Come on. Where are you? So our Pepsico young members? Come on, stand up. Yeah, and this is a new level of involvement for Pepsico. We have a group of young employees who are now getting more involved with the community. We have been a consistent supporter of the WCA, but I think our engagement really is something that could be improved upon, and we have, I think, really the next generation of WCA members here, and I was very encouraged to see that we've got, I guess, 6 of you here. And how many others are there in your group? In your yeah, your Connect group. 400, yeah. So we've got a group called Connect, which is very much aligned with the theme tonight. It's young employees who are really looking at how to shape our company for the future, and I think they'll provide some good information and good feedback tonight. So thank you very much for attending. I'm very proud to see that you all were here. So with that, I'll pass it over to the board here. Okay.
Thank you. So we have some new partners. I welcome you, and I hope you join the Young Professionals group of the Westchester County Association. We're 600 strong, and we'd be happy to take on another 400, believe you me. Another couple of people that I'd like to thank, one being a member of our steering committee who's really been helpful in the message of repurposing existing inventory, and that's Frank McCullough. Frank, thanks for everything that you do. You're a key part of what we're doing here tonight. And last but certainly not least, all the municipal officials, elected officials that are here tonight, as you can see, we have a good mix of people. The young professionals are hosting this together with the Blueprint, but you are the people that we need to hear this message. So I can't thank you enough for showing up tonight to hear this presentation. So now let's get to why we're here this evening. As you already know, the Westchester County Association has been very focused on economic development through our Blueprint for Westchester initiative. This initiative is led by the private sector and is working collaboratively across all private industry sectors, the higher education community, and also local governments. All of the efforts are underway and are focused on the big message, transforming Westchester. That's why I took this job, so I'm very excited. Our presentation tonight, Work, Live, Play Westchester, is certainly transformative. We will explore both the need for professional housing and placemaking. Placemaking is a successful national model that will invigorate the county's civic areas, corporate campuses, transportation hubs, and much more. Our goal of placemaking is to create places that are attractive for our young professionals, the educated, creative professionals, and also the housing to accommodate this group. With your help here in this room tonight, we'd like to start the process of creating the neighborhoods and amenities of the future, capitalizing on the available commercial inventory that we already have in place here today. We can't have discussions about the future without looking to our future. That's what this is all about, our young professionals. This is where the WCA's Young Professionals Group plays a huge role. We quickly realized we have a great void in the county. Our young professionals don't have places to live, and you'll understand what I mean by that soon. And if we are truly focused on growing our economy here in Westchester, getting new business, getting investment, we need to ensure that we have our young talent here. We know that Westchester produces a tremendous amount of intellectual capital. Now we need to focus our efforts on retaining that intellectual capital and attracting more. With that, I would like to introduce you to our first presenter this evening, Kevin McCarthy. Kevin is a senior associate at CBRE and also a founding member of WCA's Young Professionals Group. Kevin will tell you a little bit more about our need to create professional housing in Westchester. Please welcome Kevin McCarthy.
Green means go. Thank you very much, and Marissa, appreciate the introduction. I'm very excited to be here. And we've had this in the works for quite some time for an event on professional housing. And I think the first challenge that the steering committee and our group as a whole was given was trying to define what professional housing is and what professional housing is not. And when you hear the term, a lot of people associate it with affordable housing, and it doesn't really hit the nail on the head quite accurately enough, because when you look at the median income for Westchester County, they really try to base a lot of the affordable housing off of what that number is, and it comes in at $79,619 in this past year. And municipalities take it and look at about what 80% on the kind of the low end of what affordable is, up to about 110, 120%. And it's really up to the municipality to identify what they want to use in those situations. This is really hard to hit that number when you're in the demographic that we're talking about, because the great example we can give is we'll make up Mary and Joe as a married couple, and Mary's a teacher making $50,000 a year, and Joe's a fireman making $50,000 a year. Making $100,000 as a household, which is the important factor to keep in mind there, you're already making more than median income. And at $100,000, it's very difficult to go out and buy that house, and it's probably leaving you in the market to try to rent somewhere. And the rental market we've seen in Westchester is a hard one to touch on the professional housing end. So we're not associated with the with the affordable housing area. Most young professionals, they just simply do not qualify for this when you take into effect the household. We then looked at what the challenge is on a single family or traditional housing, and the average price of a house in Westchester is now about $557,000. And when you're, I think, anywhere from 23 to 35, it's a pretty large number, which would equate to, if you wanted to put 20% down, you're going to have to come up with $110,000 out of the gate. Another very challenging aspect. The taxes are a barrier of entry in most places. A lot of these communities around here have a very high tax base, and when you're asked to carry $14,000 or $15,000 a year, that's a big challenge to take at such a young age and such a modest salary. And then the areas where there is some affordable housing, the challenge is that they're not in the greatest of appealing areas. And we're going to touch upon that, of where they are within the county and what type of amenities you're looking for when you're talking about this type of professional housing. So what we're looking for is not to go in the house direction, but go into the apartments and townhouses, reasonably priced. And starting at around $1,500 a month, making your way up to $2,800 a month. But keep in mind that you're going with a household. So it's not that one person's going to take down $2,800 a month in rent, but if that, we'll call it either a man or wife, or a family member wants to come in and take a 2-bedroom down, that would be a professional housing aspect. Whereas a single person could come in and be able to afford that $1,500 a month. They're not looking for all the bells and whistles of what I guess the Ritz-Carlton would be in terms of your apartments. You're looking for maybe a modest fitness facility, some easy access to parking with a security of some sorts on site. We're not about pools or spas or concierge, but something you can get by with and feel safe with. Having the ability to have your place that you live near where there's walking distance to bikes, to trails, to parks, to open space, to retail, to restaurants and dining is important. And I think the last point on this slide, mass transit is vital. We live and breathe by whether it's our major roads and highways and the train. And I know a lot of us who've come out of the city love going back in, or have lived up here and heading into the city for some entertainment. So it's really important to be by the train. Who needs professional housing? We just did a little bit of a background check on who we are. I think, as Marissa had pointed out before, we're 600 strong in our group, hopefully 400 now that Pepsi's committed. But we took a look at who really it fits into: finance, insurance, hospitality, banking, our teachers, our firemen, our police, anyone in the medical industry, doctors and nursing. They make similar amounts of money. They have a lot of similar common interests in where they want to be and what they want to live around. These comes from transplants that come out of the city. These are also homegrown talent that's been in Westchester and maybe left for a little bit and stick around later, and now they're back for more. A lot of our group, 23 to the 35-year-old range. You come out of college, you spend a year or so home with mom and dad, and that's about as much as time you want to have there. And so that you make your way out and try to find an apartment after that. And the ranges that we found at $50,000 to $120,000, you're going to have to support yourself on that earlier slide of $1,500 a month per month on rent. So starting around in that range, which is a very broad range, but keep in mind the example I gave before with Mary and Joe, you could both be making $50,000, but your household combined is $100,000. So you have to fit into this little mold that we're trying to construct. What are young professionals looking for? And we touched upon this a little bit earlier, but again, access to mass transit, and this was actually of a survey that we did this year with our members. There's a couple of key points that they pointed out for us to keep in mind as we look forward to this presentation. A community rich with restaurants, shops, fitness centers, shopping, open space, access to entertainment, access to parks, any sort of green space. Always want to have convenient parking, any sort of community type atmosphere. Obviously access to quality health care and inviting community atmosphere. We then asked, where are they living now? And this is where the answers kind of got pretty fun to look at. Those that get lucky are in multifamily homes. Someone has an extra room in the basement that they converted into a bedroom basement, or a loft for an attic of an apartment. Those are a little bit more of the get lucky if you can, stick as long as you can in those situations. The other alternative was you live in a place that has numerous roommates, designed for maybe 3 people. You take a master bedroom, cut it in half, and all of a sudden you have a fourth, and you can divide the pie a little bit more easily, more affordable. When family members can get together, a lot of our members have had situations where your aunt and uncle have an extra bedroom you can take a monthly rent in, or brother or cousin, whoever it might be. And the others were in neighborhoods that they felt a little isolated from their other young professionals, their other people that they were around, not being in an area of urban or near trains or near restaurants and entertainment, which we're going to touch upon in a little bit. So why professional housing in Westchester? Well, as Marissa said before, it's essential for economic development. Businesses want to be where the talent is, and I think at the end of the day, the reality is we're actually a very cheap labor force. I know it's tough when you first get going, but we're here and we're ready to work. They want to live in cool and affordable places. They don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere. They don't want to be far from the trains or mass transit or shops and dining. They want to be where life takes place. Difficult to create a work-live environment if employees are not living locally. So when you have to commute in, those days of a 90-minute commute when the highways are already as packed as they can be, and then on top of that with a long work week, it's a tough drive. It's a tough drain on the individual. So being so far away from where you work is definitely a strain. We'd like to also make a stride to reduce the net migration of young professionals out of Westchester. I think we all have a friend or relative in the room that you know that says, oh, so-and-so moved out to Charlotte, or he's down in Austin now and he's loving his life because it's more affordable. It's becoming a trend, and you'd love to see your friends and family stick around if you could. So why professional housing in Westchester? Increase or repurpose current Westchester inventory so it's more desirable. Many opportunities or potential opportunities exist to take some of those vacant spaces, whether it's land or office buildings, and potentially make them into a young professional neighborhood. Currently, a lack of inventory that is affordable. You really can't find it many places. I was talking with a young lady before about how that sign on the Harlem line as you pass White Plains, you could be home now, it says. And I think a lot of us who take that train know it, but when you have to pass it, it really ticks you off because you can't afford that right now. And to have the ability to have more of that product out there would be important. What is affordable is isolated. In some safe neighborhoods or unsafe neighborhoods, they're generally not desirable. So areas that have been around and improved or trying to improve, it would be a great thing to look in, but we're just not ready to make the dive into certain areas that are unsafe. So with all that being said, I'm going to hand it off back to Marissa, who's going to give us a little bit of a lead into the placemaking discussion that's going to take place tonight. Thank you very much.
So as you heard, clearly we have a need for professional housing in Westchester. Our group of people, our group of members, they want to be able to live amongst each other. And we don't have that environment here in Westchester, so we want to present the opportunity to create that. Our young professionals are not just looking for units to live in. We could offer that, you know. Kevin brought up the fact that you could be in a 2-family house, or you can be one unit of affordable housing amongst a larger development. We want to live amongst each other. And I say we because I fall into that category. So imagine transforming some of our existing office space. Kevin alluded to that. You know, maybe we could make some of the existing office space in some of the corporate parks professional housing. Sounds good, right? We have a lot of inventory. But who wants to live amongst half-empty office buildings? Not me. That's why we partnered with Project for Public Spaces. And that's why we're presenting tonight's program, because we want to take it a step beyond. Yes, we have existing inventory that we feel we could repurpose, but we need to create the place to surround it where our young professionals want to be. So with that, welcome to Work, Live, Play, Westchester. And I'd like to introduce you tonight to Meg Walker and Rob Lane, who are going to tell you more about placemaking and specifically how we can create these places here. They're going to provide the vision to make it happen. It's a tall order, Meg and Rob. I hope you can deliver. Meg is an architect and planner. She serves as Vice President of Project for Public Spaces, a nonprofit urban design and planning firm that works with communities around the world, to transform their public spaces. They have a very good reputation, ladies and gentlemen. To the elected officials in this audience, Meg feels your pain, as she is also on the Board of Trustees in the Village of Hastings-on-the-Hudson here in Westchester County, and she understands all too well the budget constraints that everybody is facing. Rob is the director of the design program at the Regional Plan Association, better known as RPA, to those in the room, which is devoted to reforming the metropolitan landscape through research and place-based planning and design interventions. Through this work, Rob has pioneered innovative strategies for community-based planning and design for a wide range of urban and suburban environments. Rob has completed 2 major independent research projects funded by the National Endowment for the Arts and the New York State Council of the Arts. Before joining RPA, Rob was an associate partner at KPF Architects. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I, of course, had a sneak peek at the presentation, and it is not to be missed. So get comfortable, because you're about to see a great presentation. Please come on up and wow us.
Wow, Marissa. Thank you so much for inviting us to speak. This is really exciting what you're doing. I think WCA is definitely going in the right direction for Westchester County. And thank you all for coming tonight. I think this is really an exciting opportunity for all of us. And I want to start by asking you all a few questions. How many of you moved to Westchester County because of its lively street life? Anybody? Yeah? How about entertainment and cultural programming? No? What about the bar scene? The nightlife? No? Anybody? Okay, all right. So what about abundant green space? Yeah, okay. Good schools? There we go. And a great place to raise kids. Yeah, right. Me too. That's why I moved to Westchester. And I'm sure even the young people in this audience would say the same thing probably. But there are a lot of young people who are looking for more than abundant green space and good schools. And they're probably looking for more even than the housing that Kevin was talking about that we really need here, as well as the great jobs that are available and could be available in the future. They're really looking for a lively and vibrant place to live. And unfortunately, Westchester is competing with towns, cities, neighborhoods around the country that are offering this vibrant lifestyle and the unique sense of place and this vibrant character that we're talking about. In fact, we got to compete with Brooklyn, which for many young people is really the center of the universe now. Everybody wants to live in Brooklyn. So Rob and I are here tonight to talk about how we can transform parts of Westchester into places where young professionals, and maybe other people as well, would like not just to work, but to live and play. So the kinds of places that radiate energy and a sense of community. The kinds of places where you want to linger and not just commute back and forth from. So we really need to bring placemaking to Westchester. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what placemaking is, and then I'm going to ask Rob to come up and show you how we are proposing to transform Westchester. So, first of all, Westchester County really does have some great bones. It's got a great foundation on which to build, some really good potential places. And we've got terrific downtowns, but, you know, some of them are lacking things. There's Ossining, which has beautiful architecture, and downtown Yonkers, also kind of definitely a lively downtown. But we really need something more in our downtowns. They do have good architecture, they do have transit access, but they lack a certain life. Our parks are really beautiful, and as we said, many of us move here because we have fantastic green space. Everything from Ward Pound Ridge Reservation, extraordinary place. Kensico Dam Park, Tibbetts Brook Park. These are lovely places, but they're really not the kind of places where you know, unless you have kids, where you want to go and hang out and go again and again. Commercial corridors, of course, we all have to do our shopping there, but wouldn't it be great to transform them into places where you actually want to be instead of a place you want to flee? Train stations. Many historic, beautiful train stations, and providing great access into Manhattan. But a lot of them need some work, and they have tremendous opportunity for transit-oriented development around them. In fact, we're going to talk about one of them in Portchester. Rob's going to talk about it. And of course, Marissa's favorite, corporate office parks, which have a lot of vacancy right now, as we know. They offer tremendous amount of open space, a lot of potential to do something with, not to mention acres and acres of free parking. Greenway trails, we've got incredible trails for hiking and biking. They actually attract people from around the region. The South County Trailway, North County Trailway, Old Croton Aqueduct, but they're not really connecting places. And imagine if you could actually ride from place to place. Civic institutions like the county courthouse and its plaza, which is sorely in need of activating. Other civic institutions in your towns, your village halls, your libraries could become lively places. Waterfronts, well, many of them are languishing, waiting for cleanup and redevelopment, and someday we'll get there. But they have amazing potential, and even those like Ryetown Beach, it's a beautiful place, but it could probably be better. Industrial districts, we're going to talk a little bit about this tonight too. It's hard to believe that Westchester actually has industrial districts. We do, but many of them have really outlived their usefulness. And so they have incredible buildings though, in White Plains, in Yonkers, even in Elmsford. There's a tremendous inventory of buildings that we need to do something with. We also, in Westchester, do have incredible destinations, terrific places and events and programs that attract people from throughout the region. Everything from Caramore with its music festival, the jazz on the Yonkers waterfront, our great farmers markets that we have throughout the county, wonderful institutions like the Tarrytown Music Hall and the Paramount, even just recreational activities like sailing on the Sound. I mean, that's an amazing, just incredible resource. But look at where they are. They're scattered all around the county. And you have to drive at least a half an hour to get to any one of them, unless you're lucky enough to live next to one. And then it still doesn't, even with that great destination, you still don't have the critical mass of activities that will really make it into a vibrant place. So what is placemaking? We've been throwing this term around. Well, someone said to me, and I really like this definition, placemaking is turning a neighborhood, a town, or a city from a place you can't wait to get through to one you never want to leave. I think that speaks of emotional attachment. And I think we all have an intuitive sense of how we can be attached to a place. And I think young people have a different emotional attachment. And that's what we have to look at. What is it that really is going to inspire young people? Not just middle-aged people like me. In the city of Chicago, they've done a lot of placemaking in their neighborhoods, a lot of the urban neighborhoods. And they said, the Metropolitan Planning Council said, Placemaking is an overarching idea and a hands-on tool for improving a neighborhood, city, or region. It has the potential to be one of the most transformative ideas of this century. That's this century. I think that placemaking is really becoming widely recognized as a way as a tool to really inspire not just vitality, but also economic development and even tourism. And it has particularly been used in urban neighborhoods. But I would argue, strongly argue, that it's just as important to use placemaking, not just to bring vitality, but also sustainable lifestyles to our suburban neighborhoods. Now, Project for Public Spaces is not the only organization that does placemaking and is promoting it to transform communities. But we've been around for, well, it says here 37 years. It's hard to believe. And we've been working with communities around the world, as Marissa said, to bring placemaking and to create vibrant public spaces. And we've developed some tools and some principles that I want to share with you that have worked in a lot of the communities that we've worked in. At the very heart of placemaking is this concept that it's not just a design, it's not just something that is physically appealing. It's more than design. It's really about making things happen. And it's about attracting people who will attract people who will attract people. The guy who really was the seminal thinker in placemaking was William H. White, and he said, what attracts people most, it would appear, is other people. And there are a lot of different examples, of you can probably think, you probably would have an intuitive sense of what really is a place and how to make things happen. But just imagine, a park is much more than just a park when it's filled with people at a community gathering. And you're in a parking lot in a downtown when it's transformed into a farmer's market, becomes a fantastic place. People go there not just to buy produce, but actually to meet their friends and neighbors. And of course, when activities can spill out of the restaurants and cafes and onto the sidewalks, then that starts to enliven our streets. And we need a lot more of that. Imagine, really lively sidewalks. And public art, you can go a long way with art to really engage people. I look around here and I'm completely, awe-inspired by the art on this property. But what I particularly like in public spaces is art that engages people, and the kind of art that people can't keep their hands off of and they want to climb on and they want to play with. So PPS has actually come up with 4 great attributes of a great place. What makes a great place? Uses and activities, comfort and image, access and linkages, and sociability. And uses and activities, well, you really need to have activities that appeal to a broad cross-section of people. And that includes, when you're thinking about young people, we're not just talking about one demographic. We're talking about multiple income levels and different backgrounds. So diversity is really important. And the activities really need to be taking place during the day and at night, weekdays, weekends, and throughout the year. You really have to think about how you can program things through 4 seasons. And you've got to be able to get there, and not just by car, but on foot, by bicycle, by transit. And we've been talking a lot about transit tonight, and I think we're hammering home how important that is to young people. Comfort and image. Again, we're not talking about just how beautiful something is, but how can you make it comfortable so people want to linger? What kind of amenities can you provide so people want to stick around a while? How can you use art, as I said before, to really make people want to stay? And maybe the most important one of all is sociability. And that's really what we're talking about tonight, because people want to be with other people. So the place needs to be welcoming. It needs to be the kind of place where you can run into your friends and neighbors, meet new people, attend community gatherings, and even give your sweetheart a kiss. Now, we've been promoting these ideas for a long time, but recently it was really, these ideas have been corroborated by a survey done by the Knight Foundation. Just in the last 3 years, they interviewed almost 43,000 people around the country and asked them what qualities attached them to their community. And the most important thing, the number one quality was social offerings, the opportunity to meet people, and both spontaneously and through kind of more formal programming and entertainment. And the second was openness, which again is about this diversity. How can you make your place, your community, welcoming to a variety of people? And the third, well, it is aesthetics. How a place looks is really important to people, but they were particularly talking about, and they stressed, green spaces and open spaces. And I think this is very much what we're talking about tonight. Another tool that we've introduced and we've used in a lot of communities, and I actually use this with developers as well when they're doing a new development, is the power of 10. And this is a concept that combines places to create a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts. So we're talking about more than one place. Now, a place, as we've been saying, is a very active, whether it's a street corner or a plaza, it's a very active place. And we like to say it should have at least 10 things to do. And then each neighborhood or downtown or park should have at least 10 of these places with all these activities. And a larger city needs at least 10 major destinations or major places. Now, when you put these all together, they don't just kind of float around, and isolated like little islands. They really you need to layer them. They need to triangulate so that they give each other synergy, so that they complement each other. And that's really important when you're dealing with things on a larger scale. And we call that triangulation. And then they need to be connected in the ways we've been talking about. And once you have that many places, you can create a district that has between 100 and 1,000 things to do. So talk about lively. Now I want to give you an example of a place, a district, a power of 10 that we've worked on in the last few years in downtown Houston. And if any of you have been to downtown Houston, you probably know that it's not rich with street life and pedestrian activity, and it's really hard to get people to go downtown because there's not a whole lot to do. Well, the city identified a 7-acre site with some green space, but it's mostly parking lots. And to say that it is underutilized would be a gross understatement. The only things that use it are a few cars every day. Well, we met with the community there, and we had some community meetings and asked them what kinds of activities they'd like to see in a new park on that site. And by the way, it's right next to Convention Center, which is a major destination. So they came up with a number of ideas, and we mapped it out and created kind of the power of 10 in this park. And they recommended things like outdoor performances on a great lawn, great restaurant, pond for sailing boats, playgrounds, water features. And when we put them together, we started to get, you can see, when we put it together, this is the vision, you start to see kind of the energy starting to happen here. Really, the things are beginning to work together. And once it's realized, when I show you the pictures, you'll see how these things kind of layer and triangulate. This is an example of one of the sites. This was the restaurant site. And the public said, we want more than a restaurant. The restaurant should have next to it a treehouse for kids to climb in and a bocce court for people to play on. It should have a water feature. It should have plenty of outdoor dining. So this is what it looked like after it was built. And it happens to be next to other activities and has become a great destination in the park. They also identified this empty street as potentially the heart of the park. and a great promenade right through the middle of the park. And it's become a really lively place with festivals and markets and kind of the center of the park. And I will show you a few other images. So this one is interesting because, yeah, you've got the outdoor performance space with the stage and the movie screen, but behind it you've got a restaurant, and then there's the pond, which is under construction in this picture. You've got a water feature back there that people are playing in. So you begin to see how these things start to complement each other. Some quiet, passive areas for people to sit under these live oak trees in the shade. A great water feature that not only becomes a focal point where people like to meet, but on hot days, everybody's under that water cooling off. Of course, a great playground. And then at night, it becomes a mecca for young people, just like Bryant Park, with its movie series. Downtown Houston now becomes a mecca for people to come to outdoor concerts and movies. And these are people who would never have a reason to come downtown frequently. So this park is now attracting over 1 million visitors a year, people who would not otherwise be there. So it's just a great, bringing this kind of population to the downtown is really important. The city and private sources put $100 million into building this, but it's catalyzed $850 million in new investment in real estate around it. That's tremendous. Okay, I can hear you saying now, well, this placemaking sounds kind of expensive. $100 million, I don't think we have that in Ossining. I don't think we can create this kind of park. Well, I'm here to say that there are other ways to do it that are lighter, quicker, and cheaper. Doesn't require $100 million. You can do short-term, low-cost projects that will begin to activate your downtowns, your parks, your plazas immediately, within a few months, with very little investment. So you can use programming, which doesn't cost a lot, events, providing a few comfortable amenities that will get people to stick around a while, pop-up public spaces, simple light construction like little kiosks, food kiosks, and so on. And one of the best examples in the world of this kind of pop-up public space is Paris Plage. Anybody been to Paris and seen Paris Plage? It's a fantastic kind of setting that the city of Paris has created during the month of August to allow people, and it's actually on this highway that they close along the Seine River, and it gives people this staycation so that those people who can't afford to go to the Riviera, they bring the Riviera to Paris. And they provide all kinds of opportunities for lounging around, for soaking up the sun, what there is of it, for dining and drinking, also recreational opportunities, dancing, bocce, trampolines, and of course a number of entertainment venues and live performances. It's become a great draw, terrific. Another example are pop-up cafes and lounges, which kind of originated in Europe, but now they're all the rage in Brooklyn and Manhattan and around the country. And these don't take a whole lot of infrastructure. You just need a few pieces of movable furniture and some kind of shade and a bar. And of course, the bar is really important. And bingo, you've got a place that attracts young people. These have become incredibly popular. Now, if you want to activate your street and you don't have enough space on your sidewalk, you can do what we call parklets. So you take up the traffic lane, the parking lane, with just a few tables, and you start to immediately create a sense of place on your street. So you see, you can do it. You can do it simply. You can do it cheaply. You can do it quickly, and you don't have to wait. You can start doing it right now. And I'm going to introduce Rob now, who's going to talk about how we want to bring this kind of placemaking to Westchester.
And now the anchor leg of the 4x100 individual medley. How are we doing? A little behind the French, I think. So I'm Rob Lane, and I'm a recovering architect. So be warned. What if we applied MEGs for big ideas, access and linkages? comfort and image, activities and uses, and sociability to places in Westchester. And what if we tried to make the Power of 10 work there as well? So we're going to take 3 places off of that master list of Westchester's neediest cases, and we're going to sort of show them and how they might be transformed. And they go from the kind of familiar to what I think is sort of the very unfamiliar and maybe even a little bit cutting edge. So first of all, train stations. You know, there are 33 train stations, more or less, in Westchester County. How many of them are memorable to you? And no fair saying that, well, they're not memorable to us because we don't commute by train. Because if those train stations were actually doing the right thing, they would be memorable to you even if you didn't use the train. Because you'd be going there for other reasons. You'd be going there to have coffee. You'd be going there to go to the farmer's market. So even if you're not a commuter, these places need to be recognizable. They need to be part of the community fabric. They really need to be places. They need to be destinations. And we have, in a lot of ways, even though a lot of people think they've sort of invented transit-oriented development, or TOD, the fact is we grew up around it. These are the original TODs, and you know some of them, the places like Bronxville and Pleasantville, Scarsdale. These are really the kinds of models that the rest of the country is imitating and that we have to bring to the other 27 train stations in Westchester County. And by the way, just on the affordability thing, most planners now talk about affordability in terms of the H+T index, which is housing plus transportation. That's how you decide on, we spend an unbelievable amount of money on our transportation, and particularly on the automobile. And every dollar you don't have to spend on a second car or even a first car is money you have to do other things with. So we have to think about transforming these places. Now, as an example, we know that Portchester is a pretty cool place and a pretty cool downtown, but there are a lot of pieces there, and they're not really particularly well connected. This is within a stone's throw of Main Street, and yet it could be a long way from Main Street, because if you've been to Portchester, it's not really the pleasantest walk. And by the way, this whole notion that people only walk a quarter mile is not true. People will walk a half a mile if it's a nice walk, and they won't walk 10 feet if they think it's unsafe or unpleasant. And this is a classic place, Portchester, where the whole is somehow less than the sum of the parts. And, you know, this is sort of the sort of case of Todd, T-O-D, Todd's stupider, older, or younger brother, Tad, transit-adjacent development, where things are close to the train station, but you really can't quite get to them. So how would we change this? Well, in this simulation, which is just first a sketch of the plan, the notion here is that what is now surface parking would, under the right circumstances, financial circumstances, actually could be put into a parking structure. That parking structure, and I don't have a pointer, and I couldn't do it 4 times if I did, but if you look in the bottom left-hand part of this drawing, there's a kind of a ring around what was the parking deck, and that could be this model of putting housing around the parking deck. So what you see on the street and what faces the public spaces is the activity of storefronts, of doors and entrances into buildings. And in the center of it, a great public space where all of these Power of 10 things that Meg was talking about could take place. And if you think about it, this is a photograph of the existing station. As I understand, actually a restaurant is moving in there. Good thing, a good start. But imagine if this place actually were transformed by the principles that Meg was talking about. And what's happening in this image? And what's happening in this image is mostly the lighter, greener, cheaper stuff that Meg was talking about. It's really putting in landscaping. It's getting rid of the car so that you can have a space where you can actually do activities other than parking your car. It's about finding programming activities for young people that could take place here and turning this from just being a lot of surface parking lots into what we would consider to be a real place. And then, when you've invested in the public amenity and the person's property that's next to there is worth a lot of money, he's interested in coming in and building something, and building, very likely, the kind of housing that we've been talking about for the workforce here in Westchester. How about industrial districts? We all know these and love these. This is the Brooklyn model. These are wonderful buildings that have proved over the years to be incredibly reusable. And these are places, these districts that get changed, are places where young entrepreneurs get together and where there's enough agglomeration of activities so that the kind of innovation and incubation activities that we want to take place. This is the neighborhood as factory. This isn't just pushing all the manufacturing out of the way. This is about finding the higher value stuff that really works here and creating an environment where entrepreneurs meet and interact and share ideas. Soho, NoHo, Dumbo, Mayor Flood. How about SOMO, South on Westmoreland? And I'm not great at marketing or these kind of acronyms. And in fact, unfortunately, in this case, the SO probably doesn't stand for South so much as it stands for so close, yet so far. The Westmoreland Avenue area, which I'm being to show in this picture, is actually an incredible location because it's incredibly close to downtown White Plains, to the Galleria Mall, to a wonderful neighborhood that's immediate to its east, to the Bronx River Greenway, and a very short distance, by the crow anyway, is the train station. And but for that connection, this place could really come alive. And some photographs of it, and you can see it does have the kind of buildings that we associate with the NoHos and the Sohos and the Dumbos, these loft buildings, old factories that can be repurposed and used for other kinds of live-work situations. You can, but that's not all great architecture, that picture on the lower right, but a lot of it is really interesting stuff that you can't recreate now, the kind of textures of the buildings. And what if we were, again, to apply to a place like this the same power of 10? And we can transform it with the same kind of lighter, greener, cheaper placemaking that Meg has been talking about. And that street can suddenly start to look like this. A place where people meet, where there's actually activity on the sidewalks and on the streets. You can see the pop-up cafe kind of idea that Meg was talking about. It's cheap enough to do. Rebuild the streetscape and make this place that is ultimately works not just for the neighborhood there, but it also makes it possible to connect at this end of the road down to the train station. It makes this place a transit accessible place. And now for the final one, which is Marissa's favorite child, if I'm allowed to kind of say that. We have millions of square feet of office parks. And we have to do something about it. And to people who would say, well, we're going to just walk away from it, I would say there is a tremendous amount of sunk investment in these places, and I'm going to talk about. And so it's not so simple to just walk away from these places. And around the country, there aren't a lot of examples, but there are a few examples of places where they're trying to do this. The Forrestal Center in Princeton, those two pictures on the lower right, are both from the University Town Center in Maryland, a former office park turned into a mixed-use development. On the upper left, of course, Google, right? Where else? Playing golf outside of your office. It's a great thing. The acronym for this place, so what? I don't know. I think, again, so close yet so far. I mean, look at where it is. Look at how close the Platinum Center is to all these other uses that are around it, to SUNY, to Manhattanville College, to downtown White Plains. We're, by the way, located just below that bubble where Purchase is, in those kind of white dots. I think that's us. We're right a stone's throw away from this place, and yet we can't get to it. When you go there, what you find, and this is pretty typical of a lot of these places, is sort of buildings that are kind of marginally used at the moment, oceans of parking, where people basically, the stuff that comes out of their tailpipe sits there until the first rainstorm and then gets washed into the nearest stream. But these places also have, as I was saying, incredible assets. I mean, I was struck when I drove around there by the landscapes, which are unbelievable. I mean, it isn't all necessarily the kind of trophy art landscape that you have here, but amazing, amazing landscapes and topography and mature stands of trees and wonderful buildings that are well occupied. So we're not going to walk away from this place. So, well, I said I wasn't a recovering architect, right? What if it was this easy? And over, however, the next couple of years, this place actually became more of the kind of mixed-use place that Meg has been talking about. And to develop this plan, this kind of sketch plan, what we started with actually, I'll actually go back for a moment just to kind of, so you can get across the reference between what's there and what we added. Because we added some stuff, but we did it strategically, and we left a lot of good stuff behind. And we started with the landscape, because there are, as I said, amazing mature stands of trees. There's incredible topography, and did you know there's a stream? And we used that stream when we were starting to make our connections. So one of the things Meg said was access and linkages. Step one is to complete the street network. And actually, by making several strategic connections, right now, you have Corporate Park Drive and Red Oak Lane and Gannett Drive. Each of them goes into their own precinct, but you cannot get from one to the other. Well, there are a few places, if you're smart, you can kind of sneak between them, but for the most part, you can't get between them, although they are literally adjacent to each other. So the first thing we do is we introduce some streets to complete this street and block network. And by the way, most of these streets are over existing parking lots. There's not a lot of new paving here, and there's a lot of net takeaway paving by the time that we're done. And we're reconnecting Manhattanville Road. Yes, I said it. We are going to connect back to Manhattanville Road and connect to those other office parks. We're going to connect across 287, and we're going to link this place, which is really at the center of quite a few destinations, to what is around it. We talked about being able to move through other means, through trails and bikeways and so on. So in this diagram, that kind of dashed line represents the trail that we would propose, the signature one, from a new center, which I'm going to describe, to the Windward School, which is down there. Why not connect these institutions? And if we move the daycare center that's currently at the bottom of Manhattanville Road to a new space, which I'll describe in a moment, we can link those two institutions along this fabulous greenway. And that can be the signature greenway in a much bigger network of greenways that take you between these properties. And if you don't think this can happen, if you go there, you'll see it's happening already, actually. People are already beating paths between these different properties. Some of them are actually quite nice. And once you start to get enough going on there in terms of, I'm sorry, here in this image. Once we get enough people there and enough activities there, we can start to support other transit options. And by the way, that street network that I talked about is essential because rather than trying to convince Beeline or whoever to run a series of shuttles up and down like this, now we can create a route through this place that can pick up more and more of these people. And that actually can be 2 or 3 of our power of 10 right there, is the activity, what will happen at these much nicer transit locations. We talked about living, and we talked about housing. And one of the keys to affordability and having accessible housing is a diversity of housing typologies. And what you can do here with all these different landscapes is you can have a whole variety of housing, attached housing, things from townhouses to small apartment buildings, maybe even a mid-rise, dare I say it, maybe a high-rise building up on the hill where you could actually see this from 287, a kind of beacon for the whole development. We talked about playing in Westchester. And in a plan like this, we can have a big diversity of open spaces where we can start getting the kinds of activities that Meg was talking about, the concerts, the movies, passive recreation, active recreation. The landscape is so diverse there, and all we have to do is put some other uses around it, and we can bring them to life. And finally, and there's this little key plan in the bottom of the right, is the place that we thought lent itself most to being its own little complete center here. And this is a place where you really can do all the activities of living and working and playing. There can be mixed-use buildings where there's shopping below, maybe offices on a floor and housing above. We can have various housing formats around it. The signature trail network that I talked about can pass through a new public open space that we would build along Corporate Drive, which we'll have to rename. We can have a naming contest for that, I suppose. We're going to move the daycare center from the foot of Manhattanville Road. We're going to make that a retail site, that red dot that you see at the top of that plan. And to the bottom left there, where that orange shape is, that's where we'll put the daycare and the civic use, linked by a greenway to the Windward School. So how would this place be transferred over time? And it could become this. We could take this office building. We actually thought that this site was almost there. The stream actually is daylighted in this location in front of the buildings. And there's enough of a sense of space here that we felt that with a few strategic interventions, we could create the great public placemaking that we're talking about and really incent the kind of development that could complete this as a place. Our power of 10, way more than a power of 10, but just to give you one illustrative idea about how we imagine these uses could be distributed through here is this diagram. We want you to think about the places, all of us, as we drive home or take the train home, we look out the window, we see places, and we go, why can't that be something different than what it is? And what we're inviting all of you to do tonight is to think about those places that you go by that are in your town that you would like to see transformed, and tell us where they are. Have us look at them. Let's compile a kind of laundry list of these places that we think could be transformed through placemaking. And so with that, I'll conclude.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. And thank you for joining us for a great event tonight. Work, Live, Play, Westchester. I'm Marissa Brett, and I am the Executive Director of the Blueprint for Westchester initiative many years ago. And so now I'm back, and my passion is definitely to transform the Platinum Mile. There's no doubt about it, but I also see the importance in the transit-oriented development and reusing our industrial buildings without a doubt. So at this point, I would like to open it up to some questions, Q&A. Does anybody have any questions? Kim?
I wonder if you could talk about the challenge of linkages, particularly in some of the river communities where there are incredible grade differentials between the waterfront and the downtown areas.
Well, actually, Dobbs Ferry, Rob is from Dobbs Ferry, and they have a little shuttle that brings people from the train station up into the residential neighborhoods, and I think that could be introduced in a lot of our river towns. But yeah, you really have to be a mountain climber in some of these towns to.
You do, but I actually think it's a little bit of a red herring. I actually don't think topography is what I think it is. It is a kind of a disincentive, but I think that if people have a reason to walk, a good reason to walk, they will walk up a hill. The number one city for, does anybody know what the number one city was for bicycling this year? Minneapolis, Minnesota. So when people say to me, oh, that's great in the summertime, but no one's gonna bike. You're not gonna get people off the road on bikes in the winter. Minneapolis is the number one city for bicycling. So I think you have to, if you build the conditions under which people like to do these things, I think that certainly it's an impediment, the weather and the hills, but it can be overcome. People have a reason to walk, they'll do it.
Yes.
My name is Ray Hollins with Guggenheim Arts in Roswell. My question is, with respect to placemaking, what is the key to sustainability? If you're attracting young professionals, how do you make it so that 5 years from now or 10 years from now, that place still attracts young professionals, it doesn't become a trendy thing and then they disappear?
Well, one of the things that we like to stress is that places evolve. And because, it's not just a design, it's not just something you build, it's something you program, and it's about activities. Activities change, and places really need to be flexible so that they can, whether it's a plaza in front of a train station or a downtown with outdoor cafes or, a street like we showed with little pop-up, tables. I think that these things are not necessarily fixed permanently. They can change over time. And I think we often build parks and plazas, we overbuild them, actually. We over-design and overbuild them so that they're not flexible. It's really important to think about how they might change over the future, because, in fact, you don't know how they're going to change, so you have to kind of leave it open. But that's a really good question.
And to give the kind of contrarian answer, similar to my one about the hill, what if it does turn over every 4 or 5 years? In New York, there's a proposal now to build so-called micro-housing, which is actually what they're doing in Boston's Innovation District, which is this district on Fort Point where they're trying to create this kind of synergy. And they've recognized, a lot of people, young professionals, want to come in. They don't want to live there for more than 3 or 4 years. They want a really sort of pretty bare bones, inexpensive place that's in the heart of a lot of activity where they can interact with their peers, and then they are ready to move on. And the trick is to sort of get the hermit crab thing going and make sure that try to cultivate this culture where there's somebody else who wants to come in and take their spot. So I think it's both what Meg said, and it's also actually anticipating some of that turnover and actually thinking that might be a good thing at a certain, for a certain kind of population that you're trying to attract.
You develop these trendy places to live, you talk about.
Those weren't air quotes, were they?
No.
Okay.
My question is you build a place where people want to live, especially young professionals. How do you keep that place affordable? People want to live there, so they'll pay anything. How do you keep that affordable for us young professionals that don't really make that type of money?
So it's not like So it's not like Soho, which started out as artist housing and then developed into a place where only hedge fund owners can live, right? Yeah, because it becomes so popular that the artists have to move out. It's a really good question because it happens all over the country. Kevin, do you have an idea about that?
It's like the impossible, it's the impossible question because it's the gentrification question.
Yeah.
And every community and city sort of has to try to find a way to deal with it. I mean, that's like such a complicated question. I don't really know quite how to answer it. It's more than just housing. It's gentrification overall. But
well, and there are ways to keep housing affordable, and through legislation and other means. So there may, and I'm talking about affordable, but there are probably similar ways to keep this young professional housing at a level that people can afford. And as Kevin was saying, it doesn't have to be. The amenities don't have to be in the housing. If they're in the neighborhood, that's where people want to be. They don't necessarily want to hang out in their lobby. So, that's another way, is keeping the costs low.
That's a way to incentivize the developers to bring down the cost because you leverage the amenities that are in the place that you're creating.
Kevin, do you have any?
The only thing I'd add to that is legislation, as Meg said, is probably the key because you have to get the municipality to be on board with you. And without their involvement, it's never going to happen. They may have the ability to put a direction in which the limitations of the people that are allowed to come in. Is it $50,000? Is it $100,000? Every year you've got to show my wife and I make that $50,000 each. If that $100,000 is the limit and you go above it, it's almost a graduation to the next level.
Mark, I know you had a question.
I'm from the unprofessionals group, and the pictures and the vision is great, but is this something for our kids, or what's the realistic time frame that this can get done in Westchester?
Oh, hey, that's up to you.
I think, are you talking about the complete transformation that I did in 5 seconds, or are you talking about the pop-up park that Meg was talking about? Because I think that from my experience in kind of doing kind of real-world plans and places and things that have been implemented and started to happen, is that there's a kind of implementation thing that goes from the things that you can do tomorrow and that are kind of really cheap to the things that are kind of more expensive. And I think that the kind of wholesale transformation is probably a 5 or 10-year vision, but there's probably a lot of intermediate stuff that can start to happen that can add a tremendous amount of value. And I would also say that I've done plans where the thing that everybody said would never happen, the one site that would never get developed, is actually the thing that happened first. So I think that the value in doing the kind of big plan is that you can at least make sure that you don't do the thing that prevents you from getting to the big vision. Don't put the self-storage facility next to the train station, even though you think it's an appealing rateable, because 10 years from now, when you want to do something different, or 5 years, or next year, it's going to be in the way. So it requires a little bit of discipline, but I think the value of the big vision is that it helps you stay away from the things that preclude you getting to the ultimate goal.
Nick.
You want to give us any thoughts on Playland?
I don't.
Well, actually,
Except that I used to have a lot of fun.
I can only say that Playland, having taken my daughter there over the years, and my husband actually grew up, I think, under the Dragon Coaster. It's a great destination. And I think
that explains it.
And I do think the power of 10 could be applied there very successfully. I think that it has to be more than an amusement park. And it really has to be rich in the kinds of places we were talking about to be successful.
Are these office parks supposed to be appealing for people who are currently in college? Since they are so close to these various campuses?
Oh, that's a good question.
I'd say the answer is
That's an interesting idea.
Oh, so he asked, is this office park transformation supposed to be for people who are still in college?
Purchase.
Like, because SUNY Purchase is really close by, Manhattanville and Fordham are all close by. And
Is that important?
yeah,
That I'm invested as a college student then, I'm like, oh, I like that, so I'm going to stay.
I think that's a really good idea, actually. And I think it would be, where do you go for lunch when at SUNY Purchase, other than the cafeteria? You have to get in your car and drive quite a ways. This place would be an easy bike ride for people. And I think it's the closest kind of cool little village center that they would have. And they would use it all the time. Yeah, but I think what your idea is really interesting, because then you actually attract them to maybe work there and live there later.
A branch of the school actually, or of some other school, could actually be a kind of a loss leader also for a site like that. I mean, I think it should be part of the mix and brings people there and creates value the way a park does.
One thing that I thought would be really great is because you have all this space here. I mean, you have art students at these colleges. You have some places that's dedicated. That's for all the colleges to bring their residents into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a very cool idea, actually.
What are the elements that you think that gave Charlestown and Quincy and Somerville such a jump ahead in the Boston area suburbs as far as what they're doing revitalization along a lot of the lines of what you presented today compared to these areas? What crystallized there that hasn't quite yet coalesced here?
Well,
I don't know if I know.
I know a little bit about Somerville, and it was transit-oriented development. It was creating a great plaza next to the train station with a variety of uses around it, restaurants and cafes, the library, and a whole mix of uses. And we kind of did a little research on how it changed after they did the plaza and then promoted the new uses there. It completely was transformed. And then the whole neighborhood around it started to transform itself. It really was, but it started with that public space next to the train station.
Well, also, I just happen to know that Somerville is actually, and this is a problem in the suburbs, right, is the D word. It is dense. It is I think it's the most dense, somebody told me it's one of the most densely populated neighborhoods, in terms of dwelling units per acre, almost any place on the East Coast. So they had a huge, really compact population there that they could tap into to take advantage of all the programming and the other public space amenities that Meg was talking about.
I think we have one more over here.
In order to make plans like this truly successful, what kind of strategies have you seen implemented to really fund these kinds of projects in similar locations?
Well, the one project that sort of comes to mind because it's sort of like this, I guess, is because it's a sort of public-private partnership model, which is something that has both good aspects and bad aspects to it, but Addison Circle in Texas sort of comes to mind as a kind of a transformational place, former industrial park. It was completely transformed. It was done using what's called tax increment financing, which Kevin could explain. I'm just the architect. But my sense of it is that, they bond against the future value that they're creating by making public investments in infrastructure and public spaces. And it's worked there, and they were actually very careful, and their infrastructure investments were tied to the success of the various phases of the development. So the days, unfortunately, when the town fathers went out and they built the grid and put in the utilities and platted the lots and then had people come in, are kind of past us, unfortunately, the way we used to build cities. And so now it's very much, this kind of how much can you get out of the developer? And that has, I have to tell you, good things and bad things about it. And the bad thing about it is, I really think it is our responsibility to tax ourselves enough to build our public spaces. I think that, trying to squeeze it out of the developer by giving him another 10 stories and having him build your public space for you is really a second best. But it's kind of where we are, unfortunately, given the kind of financial situation a lot of municipalities are in, but it's a big challenge.
But the tax increment financing is one way that, as Rob mentioned, around the country they're using it, and no one has actually used it in New York State. And Buffalo is looking at it, but nobody's actually, it's legal.
It is enabled, I think.
It is enabled by the state legislature, but nobody's actually put it into practice.
Last question.
houses, maybe a handful of years, and then I wanted to buy my home, and I did buy a home. So I just wanted to give you an example of a property about 12 or 13 years ago, the Riverview property in Tuckahoe. They had turned an old, I think, perfume factory or makeup factory right by the Tuckahoe Street.
Yeah.
And then they built,
Right.
so they made that, private apartments, condominiums, and then on the same property they built an assisted living community. It's a very unique property, but I had actually worked with the assisted living for a few years, and I thought it was just a fabulous place.
Yeah.
It really congregated both of, not only the elderly, but they were active elderly, and their families would come to visit on the weekend or in the evening, and it had a fantastic dining district and shopping district.
Right.
We're right next to the train station. I mean, literally, it was really fantastic. And you're next to parks, and next to Brunswick Parkway. I mean, the access was really amazing.
I know, to me, one of the, it is the fact that so many of the sort of continuing care and senior housing things are built as self-contained places out in the middle of nowhere. I understand that. I guess there's a development, or a developer could explain to me all the good reasons why that's where they go. But I don't get it. I don't understand why they wouldn't want to be in exactly that kind of environment where you don't have to get into a car, you're an elderly person. Maybe it's possible to have somebody actually walk you a few turns and get to a place where you can see other people. And we're building them kind of all over. And who knows, depending on the demographics, maybe we'll be here in another 10 years speculating about how we're going to repurpose, we'll be living in one. We don't want to repurpose
the nursing home that we're living in, right?
Want to stay in Westchester. Nobody wants to go.
Right.
Wants to leave the state. So if you're from the area, and over the past century, a lot of us are, you're always coming back. I
Right.
had a tenant who was from the area but lived out in California for 10 years. I said, "Why don't you come back?"
Sure.
You know what? I wasn't from the area. There was such change over there. I started to hate it. I said, I just want to go back home.
Yeah.
It's coming back home to like a county that, he's 30 something.
Right.
Taxes are just outrageous.
Yeah.
Right.
I was able to provide him that little,
That's great.
basement.
I just want to go back to this slide to bring closure to tonight. When PPS and RPA, Megan and Rob came and showed us the sneak peek of this presentation, I was truly excited. And I have to tell you, I didn't see all of it until tonight. So that's why Kevin and I are sitting there going like this, trying to see the presentation, because, we really wanted to be able to see it as well. This is inspiring. This is transformative. This is why we're here tonight. So I hope everyone here feels the same way that I do. You're here because we need you to help drive this change. I see many mayors, planning board officials. You need to help drive this change. These are, our municipalities, our cities, your cities, all of us, we really need to drive the bus. And I'm happy to say that the message is being heard to repurpose and transform and look to the future. A couple of communities here in this room are representative of that. The town of Harrison is looking to change their master plan along the 287 corridor and the downtown area. And I really hope that they'll look at some of our ideas to transform the Platinum Center and also come up with many more of their own, going through the process of working through with the community, which is really important. City of White Plains is moving forward and introducing new zoning to allow additional uses into their part of the I-287 corridor. In fact, on Monday night, there's going to be a hearing to move this process forward for the White Plains City Council. I'm going to be there in favor of moving this process forward, and I hope many more of you are going to come in support as well, because we need to be out there supporting this movement. We need to be out there to drive the change. Kind of went through all my notes already. Okay, so now I just want to get to say thank you again to each and every one of you for spending the time tonight to hear this message. Thank you to our planning committee who helped put this presentation together. Thank you to Houlihan Lawrence again for sponsoring this event, Pepsico for hosting us, but most especially thank you to the staff of the Westchester County Association, especially Julia and Laura, Harrison Edwards, our strategic partner, Corporate AV, another strategic partner, because without this dynamic team that we have in place here at the County Association, we couldn't bring you true substance events like this and all the other events that we host throughout the year, of which Julia will testify there are many. So thank you very much to our team. Thank you very much to all of you. Have a great evening.